For the first step in this process, we're going to start by making our own rigging needle. Well, it's also called a latch needle. And all I've done is taken some copper rigging wire, got about a 26-inch length here. I fold it in half. I'm going to grab one end and I'm going to twist it up. And the reason why I'm putting these twists in, it's going to give it some stiffness. Like I said, you could buy this needle, but it's good to know how to make one of these because you could be on a boat somewhere, need to fix a wind-on leader set, and you might have to just quickly make one of these needles. In the end, I'm just going to put some extra twists in on my own. And I'm going to push the very last part to a point I'm going to use to insert inside my braid. So I've almost got my needle here, and here's a good pro tip. Now I plan on making like a 12-inch overlap for my small loop at the top end of my leader. So I'm going to take this needle, I'm going to measure out exactly 12 inches. I'm going to put a 90-degree bend in here. I'm going to kind of use that like a stop so when I slide the braid on. So here's my 12-inch needle, and this thing's all ready to go, and we're ready for the very next step. Now we're ready to make the first loop in our wind-on leader. I've got a pre-cut length of 130-pound hollow braid, and I need to figure out my first insertion point. Now, since my needle was 12 inches, I know that my insertion point is going to be 12 inches, 12 inches again, and then because I want a 2-inch loop, I'm going to add 2 more inches, so I've got 26 inches, and this is where I'm going to insert my needle that I just made, or a latch needle if you actually own one. So you might notice I'm wearing a glove on my left hand, and that's because I have a little bit of a tremor. It's actually called an essential tremor. And honestly, I don't know why they call it that, because essential sounds like something you can't live without. I want to assure you I can live without this. And right now, what I've done is I've inserted my needle right inside the braid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work 12 inches of braid over my needle. Just spread this out. And just carefully, just work this right over the needle until there's 12 inches on there. And just kind of work it on a little at a time. You don't have to be very quick about this. And what this does is we're setting up to pull the other end of this back through this and create our first loop. So once again, I'm watching my length. It's almost to the end of my needle. There I am, right at 12 inches. Smooth it one more time. And now I'm going to poke my needle back out through the braid. I'm going to use my thumbnail to open up the eye of my needle. I'm going to take the end of the braid and slip it right through the eye that I just made. And the nice thing about the copper wire is you can do some clever stuff. So I can kind of squeeze the copper wire closed, and it's trapped in there. Now, my next step is going to be I'm going to pull the braid back over the wire by pulling out the needle. Here we go. So now that little end is going to get swallowed up, and I'm going to keep pulling the needle out. There it goes, just pulling it out, smoothing it over. And then eventually, the other end of the braid is going to come out. And here it is. Remove my needle, and I've got this. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to get the length of my loop at the end where I want it, which is just about 1 inch. I'm going to pinch here and then smooth the rest of this out. Now if I did this just right, it will swallow up the tail. So I've now got a nice 12-inch overlap, and I want to assure you this is ridiculously strong. And we're ready to move on to our next step. For the next step, it's now time to take my mono and put it up inside the braid. So I pre-cut a length of 300-pound mono, and I'm going to take the last 24 inches and some 220 grit sandpaper and just rough it up. And what this is going to do, it's going to let this just stick a little bit better inside the braid. And now I'm going to take the end of the mono, insert it inside my needle, nice and firm. And now I'm going to insert this inside the other end of the braid. So I have my loop on one end, go to the other end of the braid. Here we go. And I'm just going to feed this needle right into the end of the braid. just like this. Okay, now, a couple of tricks here. So you're just threading on an inch or two at a time. And by the way, I chose a 130-pound hollow braid because it fits nice and snugly over 300-pound mono. And you can do a little experimentation based on, what size monos you're trying to make on your leaders. And you could use fluoro as well. It's not always necessary. Like for trolling with a 300-pound mono, I don't really need to use fluoro for that. So if you notice, I'm keeping my hands on the needle the whole time and then just letting the braid work its way over the mono. I just feed on an inch or two. Here it goes. This is all in real time. You can make these really quickly. And once you start making your own, you'd be hard pressed to ever buy one of these again. And you'll find that you'll use them for almost every single trolling application. So I'm almost there. And now I'm within about 1 inch of where my double line for the loop starts. And I'm going to pull the needle out. And I'm going to keep working the braid over the mono. Smooth it out a little bit here. Let's slide down. Here we go. And now I'm going to pull my mono out. So here's the edge of my mono. It's just coming out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to work the braid back over that mono, just over the tip. And now I'm going to pinch here and then smooth the rest of it out. And right down into my spool of leader material. And there it is. It's nicely spooled through here. And now all I have left to do is whip this final end onto the mono leader. And that'll be our final step. Now we're ready for the final step. Now I built a very simple rig here with a couple of quick grip clamps. You really should build your own. Any kind of clamps, sticking straight up and down, about 24 inches apart are going to get this done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one end and clamp it in there. So grabbing the braid and the mono at the same time. Pull the other side with the mono nice and tight and crank that up. And now this is ready for whipping. Now I take a 24-inch length of regular dental floss. I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to take the little loop that I just made, pass the dental floss through that loop so we don't have to start with a knot. We just make this little loop. I'm going to set it about 1/2 inch from the end of the braid. Now, the whole idea of this is that we're going to get this a nice clean connection here that'll slide through the guides and also make sure this will never accidentally slip out, which is almost impossible, but just in case. So I've got my first little one on. I pull it really tight, make sure it's all still nicely stretched out. And I'm just going to set a bunch of half hitches, one right next to the other. And I kind of alternate the half hitches. You can do it any way you want. I alternate the half hitches so I can keep kind of pulling straight towards me. And just pull it tight. And this goes really quick. And the more you do this, the quicker and better you get at it. And you just, basically, I'm just setting the hitches right next to each other. Have them all in place in a moment. Here we go. And almost there. I'm just going to, and I've covered almost all the braid right now. And once I've done that, I'm going to go about at least 3/8 of an inch onto the mono as well. And it's going to make an even more tapered connection than the one I just had. Just keep alternating here. Top, bottom, top. And we are all set. And now I like to use a scalpel to trim all this off, but you don't have to. Razor blade will do it. And I have this nice smooth connection. Now the right way to finish this off is with a little Zap-A-Gap glue. Zap-A-Gap is like the bulk version of crazy glue. And I'll just kind of put a little coating on here. That out. Once it's on there, I'm just going to work it back and forth so it covers the whole knot and a little bit of the braid and a little bit of the mono on the other side. And there it is, coming out right now, just smoothing it out, make it nice and smooth. You don't need to put too much here. You're just kind of making a coating across the top to give it just a little extra strength so you don't have to worry as it runs through the guides it's going to wear out. And you're done. And that's it. The perfect wind-on leader.